This is Ray Varner, class of 2010, with the Living Legacies Oral History Program, in particular the Women of Randolph-Macon Oral History Program, and this is August 11th, 2011. I'm here in Arlington at the home of Lisa Claydon, class of 81. She was known as Lisa Tagg at her time at Randolph-Macon, and she will be the interviewee today. Hello, Lisa.
Hi there.
So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, in the Mount Vernon area.
And you went to high school there?
Yes, I went to Mount Vernon High School, actually.
Okay. So how did you hear about Randolph-Macon?
You know, I was thinking about that. We didn't have the internet then, so I think it had to have been at a college fair. And I sent away for information for it.
Did you know anyone that had gone to Randolph-Macon?
I knew of one guy who was 3 years older than I was at the time that was there. Maybe even 4 years older than me. 3 years. He had to have been 3 years.
Did you take a trip to the campus to see it?
Yes, my mother and I went down during azalea season.
What was it like?
It was the campus was beautiful and good tour. It was just a very nice experience. So I was sold on it by the campus tour.
What were the people like?
I really don't remember. I know we did, have meetings where they explained campus life and all that. So it was good. It was a good orientation, and I felt very comfortable. Felt like it was the right place for me.
So, did you base your decision on that visit, or was it?
Yes, I did.
Were you thinking about any other schools?
I'd applied to a couple of state schools. Actually, in that time, no one applied to 8 different schools. I mean, we applied to 2 or 3. So I applied to 3, Madison and Old Dominion, state schools to satisfy my parents. But I didn't want to go to those schools. I didn't like Old Dominion, and JMU was basically like my high school replicated. So I wanted to go somewhere new, where there weren't a lot of people it was just going to be the same old situation as high school.
I know it was, so what year was it when you were thinking about going to?
77.
So the college had already been co-ed for around 5 years, but
Right.
did that factor into your decision at all? Did you?
I thought any place that had 68% men and 32% women was a plus. I thought that was great. I thought there'd be more opportunities for women if there weren't as many of us. So, but by the time I graduated, it was about 50-50. And every single year, you could see it. There were more and more women coming on, which was fine. It was just, it was huge changes every year in the numbers. From my perspective, anyway.
Yeah. Could you tell me about arriving to campus as a freshman? So did you drive there? Did your parents drop you off, or how did it work?
My father took me down, and I only lived about an hour and a half away, so it wasn't a big trip. It was not real organized on the school's part. These days, since I just took a kid to college last summer, and there's so much orientation when you get there, before you get there, and there's so much information available. It wasn't like that. I don't think it was like that necessarily at any college at that time. You're kind of just thrown into the campus, and oh, by the way, go get your ID here. And it really wasn't a meeting. I mean, maybe you had a meeting in your dorm the first night or the second night or something, and that was kind of your orientation, was from your dorm person who hadn't had a lot of training about being an RA. So you were pretty much on your own. There wasn't really a central source of information that I never felt it anyway. So yeah, you're dropped off and you're like, oh my God, here I am. What do I do now?
And do you remember your roommate at all?
Oh, yes. My roommate and I actually went to high school together. It was Barb Boynest. We're still good friends. We roomed together for 3 years, and I finally said for our senior, we need to do something different, just because we can't just be, we need the experience of another roommate. We were like an old married couple. So I knew her. We weren't best friends by far. I mean, by any means. In high school, we were. We knew a lot of the same people, and we knew each other pretty well. But we didn't hang out in high school that much, sometimes. And there were 3 other guys from my high school going, and a guy from my rival high school that I met, whose father worked with my father, so we got to know each other before we went down. So there was like a posse of us from the Mount Vernon, Fort Hunt area. So we were pretty comfortable in that we already had our little group. Not that we necessarily hung out all the time, but in the beginning, we were there for one another in a big way. So we had an advantage in a lot of ways. And in some ways, a disadvantage, because we didn't necessarily reach out to as many other people on our dorm, on the hall, as we probably would have, because we had friends.
Do you think a lot of students did that? They would pretty much hang out with the people that they already had connections with?
I think in the beginning, at any school, even today, yes. I mean, I know my daughter, who goes to school in Florida, there was one other girl from Arlington that she knew that was going down there, and they hung out the first couple weeks, and then they weren't hanging out anymore. I mean, that's just, till you find your own set of friends. It's just nice to have the little reassurance. But it was kind of odd that there were 5 of us from my high school going to this school when only one other guy had gone before. So, and he was nice. He actually came down. He was a Phi Delt. He came down and, took kind of care of all of us little freshmen, because we were all in the motels.
Do you remember what the food was like when you were at Randolph-Macon?
I don't think I could ever forget that food. It was terrible. I mean, it was truly not nutritious. It was awful. I mean, the facilities they had to cook it in were probably, roach and rodent filled. It got monotonous, but they cooked things so badly. I mean, there were never any vegetables that weren't cooked to death. The salad bar we laughingly called the lettuce bar. It just literally was lettuce and a few other things. Why they couldn't just either give us butter or margarine or a selection of both? No, they had to actually mix it together. So for those of us who never even knew what margarine was, we were eating this sickening stuff. It was awful. So I used to be the one, I like to cook, but I would take, they'd have like chicken breast, for dinner, and some other green beans or something. And I would just spend a lot of time taking my chicken breast apart, putting in, stuff from the salad bar, some celery, some mayonnaise, and then toasting bread and having a chicken salad sandwich. People are like, "Where'd you get the sandwich?" "Oh my God, where'd you get a real sandwich?" I'm like, "I just sat here and made it." The food got monotonous, and I think they really could have done a better job. It was just poor quality. And they cut apples in half, and oranges, and bananas. Who wanted to eat those? They looked old, even though they weren't. We were big people. We could actually handle an apple, a whole one. So they ended up throwing away a lot of fruit, because no one wanted to eat a brown apple. I never ate an apple there, and I love apples. So we went to Anthony's a lot.
So was that a local restaurant, I guess?
Oh, Anthony's is up at the shopping center that had the Peebles. I don't know if that's still there. It was a pizza sub place.
Oh.
It's
in
still
the
there.
Martin Shopping Center?
Yeah,
kind of thing?
Anthony's is
Oh, I guess it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So was that your only option? I guess there was no other options on campus
we
other
had
than
fast
cafeteria.
food, but most of us didn't have cars. It's not like today where every kid in high school has a car, except for my daughter, according to her, apparently. But we walked everywhere we went. I mean, if someone had a car, we would get off campus periodically, but it wasn't like we were going to Richmond every day. We just didn't. We were in Ashland the whole time, and Ashland wasn't the Ashland that it is now. That whole area near the railroad tracks, at the intersection of the main road and the railroad tracks, was practically boarded up. I mean, it was the railroad station was boarded up, so it's undergone a massive renovation, and it's much nicer now. But food wise, I mean, we had a bulletin board, that people would just like pin up some of the food and say, really? This one of my most truly horrible experiences with food was eating something, salami. I don't eat salami. I don't know, I guess there were people who wanted salami. They grilled cheese and salami sandwiches. Horrible. I ate 2 of them and I was sick. Ugh. I mean, Sunday afternoon lunch was the worst. It was like everything that they didn't get rid of the whole week, they would serve at lunch or dinner. It was horrible.
There was no longer steak on Sundays, I guess.
Steak?
Yeah, well, I guess before you were there, they had steak on Sundays, and everyone really enjoyed it.
Steak?
Yeah.
On Sundays?
Yeah.
We had steak night occasionally, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
One girl's father, she was kind of apparently pretty wealthy, bought steak for the whole campus. We were so excited because she had told him how bad the food was, so he bought us dinner one night. But they cooked it.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked when they cooked it outside. At least it tasted good. I mean, we were excited when they had the cookouts. So steak night, it wasn't once a week. Are you kidding? I don't know how often it was, but it sure wasn't once a week.
Yeah, it was lunch on Sunday.
Lunch?
Yeah, I think less students were there because people would leave on the weekend, so they could have
that's when we had the absolute worst food. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And everybody was hungover, so you needed good food, and we'd go there and be like, oh my God, we're going to get sick.
Yep. So what was your social life like? I guess that's a...
That would get back to the hangover from the previous conversation, the previous statement.
Yes, yeah.
We went to the parties at the fraternities. We went to parties in dorms. Dorms would have theme parties. And we had hat parties and all kinds of stuff. I lived in New Dorm for 2 years. I was in Garland and then New Dorm, which I don't know what it's called now. Conrad. Well, they changed the name while I was there too, I think. But and then I moved back to the motel dorms for my senior year to Jones. But halls would sponsor a party, a themed party, so those were always fun. And then there was just the party wherever whoever's dorm room or hall or whatever. And in the springtime, it was just outside, in the courtyards or whatever. So it's not like we were going to bars. We had Andy's and we had one other bar that I can't remember that we would go to for like quarter beer nights. But and that was practically on campus. So there wasn't like we were all going to bars that often. It wasn't like today where you go and, even though the drinking age was actually 18, it switched to 21 my senior year and I didn't care. I was 21. And I was actually doing an internship for the General Assembly at the time, which was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But I was on the floor of the House of Delegates when they had the vote to change it to 21, and I was like, cool, okay. But that made it really hard for college, for all the different colleges. I mean, they had to really be, on the ball with liability from then on out. It was a different ball game.
Did the social scene kind of change when they made the law? And then...
No, well, you know what? It was my senior year, so I left before it was even implemented. I don't think when you pass a law like that, I think I think they usually, it depends on the law, but I think it probably started that July. So.
Makes sense. So did you participate in any activities or anything?
I was on the admissions committee. I was the one who wore the little blue jackets and gray skirts and gave people tours.
Oh.
Gave prospective students tours. I enjoyed that.
So, I guess, you toured the...
Well, when someone came to campus and, like, a senior in high school was looking at colleges, a family would come, or they would have admittance day or something, and I would give groups tours whenever they needed them. So I would just do that.
Do you remember what they might have told you to highlight on the tour, or what?
Really?
I'm sorry if that was a.
I don't think they ever really told us. I don't remember getting any training. I'm sure there was some type of training, but no, we just took people around the campus and talked about the school and life. So it was good. I don't remember other activities. I know there were some, but I don't remember.
So, I guess you weren't a little sister of any fraternities or anything like that?
No, my roommate was. Wasn't for me. I mean, why? Why should we go and work for these boy fraternities? That's all it was. Seriously.
Yeah.
You got the right to hang out at their at their house for what? Because you made them cookies and did things and whatever. But it was totally not for me.
Do you remember if there ever were any talks about forming a sorority or anything like that when you were there?
No. Never heard a word about it. Keep in mind, we didn't have the internet. And we didn't really seem to have we had a newsletter, but it wasn't like they were gathering news from everybody like today where everything's crowdsourced. So basically you just had very limited information. It was kind of word of mouth and not everybody knew everything. So, and they would announce it by putting posters up and, it didn't always work. You had to really be proactive to get involved. I mean, you had to work at it. No one came after you. You had to actually go out and do it, and a lot of us got kind of lazy.
So you mean for maybe the events on campus or anything like that? I mean, it would.
Well, we would do the events depending on what they were.
Yeah.
But I think my era of being at Randolph-Macon, I think a lot of them tended to be pretty apathetic. And I don't think that the school communicated well enough with us. I don't know how they would have done it. There probably would have been a way, but I don't think they did. So there was a community, but it could have been a better communicating community.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was a list of here's everything that's going on this week anywhere. Or here are all the opportunities for you all in one place. Not that I knew of. Maybe I'm wrong because it's been a long time, but it wasn't super easy. Intramurals, yeah, we all did intramurals at some point or another, and Greek Day and all that. Whatever, when you do, of course, you do Greek Day. We did it. Maybe it wasn't Greek Day. Maybe it was dorm day or field day or something.
Or
we all did.
Oh, so when you compete against, I guess, did you form teams with your dorm? I guess,
with friends or whatever. If they needed somebody, you would go play on the softball team or whatever.
Oh, so you mean intramurals?
Intramurals and other things, yeah.
Okay. But specifically Greek Day, do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember Greek Day.
So even though you didn't have sororities or obviously you didn't have fraternities,
we participated somehow. I don't remember how though. I don't remember how we broke ourselves.
I think it was with the dorms.
I think it must have been dorms.
Yeah, in the yearbook anyway, they mentioned here's Mary Brandt's team and stuff.
Yeah, I think it had to have been something like that. It could have been anything. You just probably could sign up any way you wanted if you had a group, but typically I think we did it with dorms.
Do you remember the Hampton-Sydney games?
I've forgotten a few of those Hampton-Sydney games. They were fun. We all looked forward to the Hampton-Sydney games. Yes.
Did you go to?
Oh yeah, I went to Hampton-Sydney. Sat on the hill, took the bus. Oh yes, very fun.
So it was a good atmosphere?
Oh yeah, it's probably a little different now, but there was a lot of drinking at both when it was at Randolph-Macon and Hampton-Sydney. So we always had buses that took you to Hampton-Sydney, and there was always a keg on the bus. I don't know if they do that anymore. Probably not. I have no idea. No, it was a lot of fun though. Really was.
And did you ever attend Camptown events or anything?
Of course.
But there were no races when you were there, right?
No races. Just lots of beer and bluegrass.
And where did it happen? If it wasn't,
it was the only one I remember was in the area between Conrad and what's the guy's dorm? Moreland, and in front of Mary Branch, that area there. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. And they had a bluegrass band and beer galore.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had never really figured out the Camptown thing because the races were long gone. There's a reference to it in a song somewhere,
Yeah, the Do Not Do Date song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, they stopped a little bit later, I guess, because I had never heard of Camp Town.
Oh, really?
When
And they also one year they actually had it over by in between the science building and the library in that area there too. So those are the two I remember. They had to have had other ones that I just don't remember. So
and it happened just before exams.
It was spring, so
in the spring.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when it was. It's definitely spring.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, one of the camp towns, the one that was behind the library, I think I came. That was my freshman year. The after my senior year, I graduated and came back and was visiting friends. So that wasn't even while I was a student.
Yeah.
You ever turn it off?
Yeah. I can turn it off.
Yeah. So I came back to Camp Town the year after I graduated. So those are the two I remember, and I'm sure there were other ones because we always talked about Camp Town, so they had to have happened. I just don't remember exactly where they were.
Yeah. So I mean, but do you feel like that was the biggest social event kind of, or what were maybe some of the other ones that we might have missed?
Oh, Camp Town was big. Hampton Sydney was big. Homecoming was kind of big. And then we had special events during the year that were big too, like we brought in bands and had concerts, whether it was in the old gym, which I think they didn't rip down the old gym, right? With the track that you could run around. That would be like destroying a antique.
Well, they did destroy the gym before that.
Well, that needed to go. That was another little rat hole. But so they had concerts in there, and they also had concerts in the gym. So there were lots of things going on. Not lots of things, but there were some big things that we all looked forward to and had a lot of fun attending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who were your closest friends while you were at Randolph-Macon?
Barb Waynest, obviously. She was my roommate for 3 years. Melissa Blake was another person. She was my suite mate for a while, and we still talk. We all email. Gary Campbell was my boyfriend most of the time, and Ned DeStefano and Willie Tyler. We all just got together all for the first time in a long time last fall, or maybe it was the fall before. Very fun. There are a whole bunch of us that stay connected, and this is our 30-year reunion year this year. So most of us already have reservations made. We're planning to go.
So
and Sarah Higgins as well. Sarah Arbiza Higgins. We stay in touch probably more frequently than most.
So were most of your friends when you were at Randolph-Macon, I guess, was it just was a random social circle in a sense, or you lived together so then you became friends, or how did?
Well, yeah, I think that for us, it's not that we all stayed hanging out in the same groups the whole time, but you start hanging out with the people in your dorm, and that's your first initial group of friends, and then you start expanding your horizons based on really what your interests were, whether you're a soccer fan or you're involved in some other club, or you're just dating somebody else, and then you're introduced to them, or you become a little sister, or you have a friend in a fraternity or whatever. So you just you expand your horizons basically, and end up with such a small campus and small student population. Everybody pretty much kind of knew who everybody was. You didn't necessarily hang out with everybody, but you didn't always have to hang in the same group. So I can say that's one thing I kind of missed after I graduated from college, was like, geez, where do you find someone to do something with immediately? It's different when you're living in an apartment, and like I have to actually call somebody and figure this out. It was kind of a shock. So I don't think we all realized how fortunate we were to have instant fun. There was somebody always up for doing something.
Yeah. So, I assume that you didn't have a curfew or any visitation rules or anything like that when you were at school, right?
I don't think that any dorm had any curfews whatsoever.
Yeah. I just did that just to see your reaction to it because,
Did they even lock the doors? I don't even think they locked the doors, did they? I have no idea.
I think the doors were probably locked. But I just say that because, the first few years when we were there, they had, curfews. And
They had curfews?
well, for the first year, they had curfews. They got rid of it kind of quick because the girls didn't like it. But then, because the men didn't have curfews, but the women did. And then there was visitation policies in the girls' dorms that guys couldn't be there.
They were totally co-ed dorms before they were co-ed dorms.
Yeah.
We would have fire alarms in the middle of the night in new dorm, and guys would come out in their bathrobes. So I mean, there were no visitation issues. People could do whatever they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was an awful lot of freedom.
Yeah. So, switching to academics now. So, what was your major?
Political science.
And did you come in thinking you wanted to be a political science major?
Yes, I did.
Any reasons? Or?
I thought I was going to law school, and until almost like December or December of my senior year, I really thought I was going to go to law school, and I had taken the LSATs, and I changed my mind. Actually, for a very good reason. This isn't such a nice story, but I was in con law, and we had to write a paper at the end of the semester, and I turned my paper in, and I don't know if they do this anymore, but our professors we used to fold our papers in half, or our blue books, or whatever we turned in, and the professor would grade them and put, they'd be folded in half, and they would put them outside their office door for us to pick up. Well, there was an honor code at Randolph-Macon, and I upholded it. I never looked at anybody else's grades, just wouldn't do that. So I found out that I had gotten an A on a paper before I'd actually picked it up. And I just thought to myself, this is kind of what law school is going to be like. I'm so not interested in that type of environment. It really bothered me. The competitiveness that I didn't have that competitive drive. I just wanted to do well, but I didn't really worry so much about what other people were doing. So yeah, I wasn't happy to hear that from my boyfriend, that he had heard from somebody else that I got an A on my paper. So do they do that anymore with the folding of the? I'm sure they don't. They probably agree the number with a grade next to it, so everybody knows their number or something.
No, I never. I mean, it would just get handed back to us.
Oh, okay.
Or I mean, if it's online, after we take exams.
Oh, you have well,
yeah.
Of course, that would be a whole different ball game. We didn't have that.
Yeah. So I never had to. There was never any papers outside of. I guess it could have been a couple of times when the professor just said you can come pick it up or something maybe. So, but other than that,
it was all the time. There were always chairs outside doors with stacks of either tests or papers or blue books or something.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more sensitive now about that kind of thing. And
that was not cool. It was so not cool.
Yeah. And was there any classes that you felt really stood out at your time at Randolph-Macon?
I liked con law. I liked a lot of my political science courses were great, and I loved English. I had Richie Watson was a great teacher. I had him for American literature, and very entertaining, interesting classes. And I had Tonette Bond for English literature, and she was so enthusiastic. She would be reading things to us and would just get so emotional and she would tear up sometimes in reading it to us. I mean, these professors loved their work, so we got the benefit of some really passionate professors, and it made it a lot more fun to learn. I learned a lot, definitely.
Were there any other professors that you felt like stood out?
I had Dr. Panel for logic, and he was a very kind, gentle man, and I loved the class. He taught philosophy, and I think he died the next semester or the next year, and what a loss. He was a great guy. I was lucky that I had him for one class.
Who's your advisor when you were?
Howard Davis.
Okay.
And I also, one of my favorite classes too was Latin, and I had Dr. Doherty, who is actually still at the school, and I saw him last fall, and I said, "Oh my God, you sound exactly the same," which probably didn't make him feel very good. He looks pretty much the same too, but he was another really terrific teacher. He was great. I took Latin for 2 full years and just loved it.
Wow. So, what did you do after graduation?
I looked for a job, and then I looked a little more. In 81, the job market was pretty terrible for new graduates, probably similar to what it is now or will be. But I was fortunate enough to get a job by September. I started like the first week of September, or maybe even the second week of September of 1981. And I worked for a trade association in their meetings and convention department. So it was interesting. I actually learned how to use the word processor, my first for a freestanding huge word processor. So it was good.
And then what did you do? What did you do after that?
I worked for 2 more trade associations, and then I went to work for a for-profit company that managed trade shows and conferences. And I became a marketing professional. Basically, I was marketing all kinds of things, also program planning for associations for conferences and trade shows. So I really specialized in marketing. So now I actually have a marketing firm that caters to the association market.
I mean, that's a little different than political science, I guess.
It is, but I'm really glad that I didn't end up pounding the pavement and I did actually pound the pavement looking for a job on Capitol Hill and couldn't find one. But I'm glad I didn't end up in the political world. Very good friend of mine's very involved in politics at the highest level in Washington, and he's worked his way up from being in college, getting his first job in a senator's office, and it's just it wouldn't have been for me. I'm glad I didn't go that route. It really it's not a pretty business, and I think I'm just better off not having gone that route. I do have a good understanding of our government and how it works, and that benefits me as just a person who needs to know, how to be a good citizen and have a nice life. So it's just common, I think, very important information. So it gave me a perspective about the world and our country, and had me think in many different ways. So I don't think it was a bad thing to major in it by any means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How have you stayed in contact with the college since you graduated?
Probably not very well. I go to events here and there, but I don't think that I actually ever write them or post anything. There was an alumni site where you could kind of have your information there and reach out to people and email people through that. I did do that for a while, but I haven't seen any reference to that in a long time. So that doesn't exist anymore. Some of us reconnected through that.
I haven't heard of it.
I can tell you right now, LinkedIn has been a good place, and so is Facebook. So for people finding people, because if one person finds somebody, then it just keeps growing. You know how that goes. So yeah, there's a group of us on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay. This is, I guess, it's a different kind of question, but if there were an entering freshman, starting out, I guess, pretty soon, I guess we start out in like 2 weeks or so, but what advice would you give a freshman who is entering college, based on your experience and the experience you've had afterwards? So what advice would you give to them?
get involved. Even if you are uncomfortable, just do it anyway. Because I didn't get as involved as I was involved in high school. I was very involved in everything in high school. And I just didn't because it wasn't as easy. It wasn't as organized. So it probably is now. But I would say really get involved and make the most of the community and the opportunities. It's probably a lot easier now.
Yeah. People always complain about, the emails in their email box and stuff like that. From all that.
Oh my gosh, that would have made such a difference because, when you've got 4 classes and you're juggling a whole lot, and some of us played sports and some of us did other things, and it was we were never taught time management or even to keep a schedule. So those skills that everybody learns starting in elementary school now, none of us went in with any of those. So it's just a different world. Definitely organization has been built into education system for the most part. I know my daughter, Arlington County, would hand her almost like a day timer every year. Here you go, keep track of everything. Randolph-Macon needs to. But they probably do have something that makes it easy for kids to keep track of their schedules and what their assignments are. It's probably all online at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, if we lost that paper that we got at the first day of class saying, here's when all the papers are due and here's when all the tests are, wow. You had to ask for another one or find it from somebody else. So it was constant chasing information.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you feel like was an important part of your experience?
Well, there is one thing, and it's funny, and it's also a little, it shows really how things have changed, I hope, and what it's like when you have a campus that is 68% men and 32% women. When the first few weeks of being at school for the first time, and here all of us freshmen would walk in a posse to the cafeteria, at dinner time or lunch. I mean, we just moved in mass, and the guys would line up on the wall. I don't know if the wall's still there by the motel dorms, a brick wall, and we would cross the street to get away from them, and they would call out numbers and rank us. And it was very chauvinistic and awful. And they probably do that in campuses now, who knows? But it was really uncomfortable because there were so many more of them. And they were the dumb freshman guys who thought it was okay. It wasn't okay. And we were not comfortable with it. It was terrible. So, but it wasn't like we're like, who do you tell? You just let it go. And eventually they stopped because they stopped being in mass as well. So then you could, we felt like you had to kind of be in a group because things like that happened a lot. There were a few things like that I witnessed over the years there where that boys do things as a group that they wouldn't normally do individually. So, and that's true of all humans, but there were some things, and I think that just happens with drinking and the age group, and there wasn't really so much, it was never really talked about on campus. And I think nowadays it's talked about a lot, the sexual assaults and things that happen. It was never discussed. And there were some things that happened. So I know that in my daughter's school now, I mean, they post things on wall. They have posters about this is, everybody needs to know what sexual assault is. Not just the girls, but the boys need to know. So they really give them a lot of information, and so they know what they're doing. So I think that was really lacking on campus as well. We didn't have any of that information available to us, and it wasn't talked about. And anytime you have alcohol, there are issues with teens. Yeah. So there just wasn't the communication and forthrightedness wasn't there. I don't think the campus was necessarily dealing with it openly, and we certainly weren't dealing with it, in our dorms. Yeah. That was kind of a big one.
it's interesting. I guess you would. I mean, it's tough that happened or went on, but so.
I'm not even sure what would have necessarily been done about it. I don't know if anybody ever actually pressed charges or made complaints. I don't know of anybody who did that.
I mean, do you feel like the women didn't feel like they could do that?
I just don't think it would have ever been. No one would have done it. Because it hadn't been talked about. I don't think there necessarily was a forum for it, and I don't know if anybody's going to. I don't think it would have occurred to anyone. It's such a small campus, and it wasn't. The atmosphere would probably not have been conducive to reporting something like that. And from what I understand, it happened more than anyone really knew.
Yeah, well, that's all the questions that I have. So
Okay.
If there's anything else that
No.
I feel like you need to mention. Okay.
No.
Well, thanks for your time.